before I say anything else. When was the last time you were completely quiet? Not just resting with music, not sleeping, not just scrolling through your phone, but just being quiet. I know many of us cannot remember. And I want to suggest to you the reason why many of us are confused about our life is because of this inability. And in this episode, I want to show you where the clarity you've been looking for everywhere is actually found. Welcome to the Light Podcast. I am your host, Isaac Gyau. Let's begin. I want you to think about something. We live in a generation that has access to more information, more teachings, more advice, more content. And yet, many people are confused about the basic questions about human existence. Like, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? More information, more confusion. More noise, less clarity. These two are not coincidence. And I want to show you that the clarity and direction you've been looking for everywhere, in more content, in more advice, in more teaching, is found in a place called the still waters. Before I go into the teaching, I want to share a personal story with you. A story about how this podcast began. Before I started this podcast, I went to God in prayer, seeking His guidance on how to go about this podcast. While waiting on God, the Lord dropped a song in my spirit. It is a song I knew already. It goes like this. The Lord is my shepherd. I will walk with Him always. He leads by still waters. I will walk with Him always. As I reflected on that song, I understood what the Lord was trying to communicate to me. That this podcast will be a place of still waters. A place where the shepherd can lead the confused, the thirsty, and the scattered to a place of clarity and direction. A place where clarity will emerge, where direction will be formed, where people can think clearly before God. So, before we talk about anything on this podcast, before we talk about purpose, leadership, and even how to address your confusion, we will begin with the still waters. Because everything flows from the still waters. Now, with that established, I want us to look at a popular passage from Scripture. Psalm 23. I know you know about Psalm 23. You probably have memorized it from childhood or written it somewhere in your book. But today, I want to show you something completely different you may not have seen in that text. Many people see Psalm 23 as a comfort poem. But Psalm 23 is not primarily a comfort poem. It is a development blueprint. This is what I mean. It shows God's method for developing, restoring, and leading His people who follow Him. And the sequence is everything. So I want to read the first 4 verses of this text. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in greener pastures. He leads by still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me on the path of righteousness for His name's sake. Now, I want us to look at the sequence from this text. It starts with relationship, rest, still waters, restoration, and guidance. But many of us want to skip this process and jump quickly to guidance. Lord, what should I do? Where should I go? Give me direction. We want direction, but we don't want relationship. We don't want restoration. We don't want rest. We don't want stillness. But that is not the process. This sequence cannot be compromised. Relationship first, then rest, then stillness, restoration, and then guidance. Now, I want us to specifically look at the second verse. He makes me to lie down. I want us to pay attention to the word makes. Not he invites us to lie down. Not he suggests we lie down. But he makes us to lie down. He makes us to rest. Sometimes God engineers some circumstances that forces us to a place of rest. You may have even experienced it. The job that didn't work out, the closed doors, the long seasons of waiting, and the seasons where things were moving very slow. God was not absent in those seasons. He was actually in those seasons. He uses those seasons to bring us to the place of rest so that he can have our attention and speak to us. Any shepherd knows that sheep do not lie down naturally. They are very anxious animals. They keep moving. They keep grazing. A sheep will keep chasing the next patch of grass until it exhausts itself. The shepherd knows this. So it creates a space to make the sheep rest. Let's look at the next verse. He leads by still waters. Again, I want us to learn a powerful lesson from the sheep and water. The sheep does not drink from a rushing water. It is afraid of it. The sound of the rushing water unsettles it. So if you take a sheep to the bank of a rushing water, it will stand there and die of thirst. And the shepherd knows this. So it finds a quiet, calm, and a safe water for it to drink from. There is a powerful lesson God wants to teach you from this. In your life, there is no shortage of rushing waters. There is more content, more advice, more teachings, and social media is a rushing water of people's opinion, of people's life, of people's expectation. And you stand at the bank of this rushing water, thirsty for clarity, thirsty for direction, thirsty for identity. But you cannot find any of those from this rushing water. They can only be found in the place of stillness. And this quietness is what many of us are trying to avoid. The clarity you're looking for is on the other side of the noise, at the place of stillness. And the next verse reads, He restores my soul. Restoration doesn't come from conference, revival, or meetings. It comes from the place of stillness. Many of us are tired about life, and we need rest for our soul so that we can hear the voice of the shepherd, so he can lead us to the next step of our life. We need to be revived, but this can only be found at the place of stillness. And then the last verse, He guides me on the path of righteousness. Finally, guidance and direction. That is what many of us are looking for, but it is at the last step. You cannot have guidance without stillness. So it begins with relationship, rest, still waters, restoration, and then guidance. This sequence is non-negotiable. You must go through it if you want guidance for your life. I want to name some noises that fills our lives here in Ghana. And I'll start with the general noise. We wake up and the first thing we take is our phone before we say a word to God. We walk with earpieces in our ear. We eat while watching something. We sleep with something playing behind. And in rare instances where silence descends upon us, we feel uncomfortable and look for something to fill it. A sense we have been trained to be afraid of silence. Then we have the noise of family expectations. Before we grow old enough to have opinions about our life and to even start making decisions for ourselves, there is a script or a map we need to follow, a specific career path to pursue, a timeline for success, and some ideal success we need to achieve. The weight of these expectations is a noise. Then we have the noise of religious activities. Here I want to be very careful because I love the church and I love spiritual activities. But you see, sometimes religious activities can prevent us from having a quiet time in God's presence so that we can hear from Him and be directed and led by Him. So you can move from one church program, prayer meeting, or conferences and not being quiet enough to hear from God. And sometimes an encounter can feel like an encounter when it is not. You can be in a room full of worship and still be thirsty of still waters. I am not saying stop going to church. Far be from that. All what I'm saying is that after all these activities, create a space so that you can have a quiet time with God and hear from Him and be led by Him. You see, in our country where there are many obligations, pressure, and many activities, you need to be very intentional in creating a place of quietness for yourself. Not only that, you need to protect that quietness. If you're not very intentional about it, you cannot create it. Before I give you one practical thing to do this week, based on all what we have said, I want to share one last story with you. This is to help drive this message into your heart. In 1 Kings chapter 19, after Elijah had defeated the prophets of Baal and had commanded fire from heaven, he was running away from Jezebel. He was running for his life. He was tired and went to sit under a tree and even asked God to take his life. And a strong wind came and tore the mountain and shattered the stones. But God was not in that. After that, there was an earthquake, but God was not in that. And there was fire, but God was not in that. And there came a still small voice, and God was in that voice. God spoke to Elijah in that still small voice. What is the lesson here? The most important things God will ever say to you about your life will come in the place of quietness, and you have to be quiet enough to hear. If you're waiting for God to shout the direction for your life over the noise, you may wait for a very long time. Before I bring this conversation to an end, I want to show you one thing to do this week. That is creating your still waters. Take 15 minutes each day this week and be quiet. No music, no phone, no noise. Just you, God, and silence. And I want you to bring in that quietness one question. Ask God one question about your life you want to know in that quietness. And I want to suggest one question. The best time is in the morning because the noise of the day hasn't yet begun. If possible, do this at the same place and at the same time. Ask, what have you been saying to me in the quiet that I have not been hearing in the noise? And just pause and listen. It doesn't have to be a complete answer. Just write anything that comes to your mind. Do this for the rest of the week. And at the end of the week, go for that note and read it loud to yourself. You begin to observe something you haven't yet seen will be on that paper. A clarity beginning to emerge. A direction beginning to form. The stillness has started its work. Maybe you're saying to yourself, you will have ways to commit 15 minutes a day to create your stillness. But you are very busy. You are full of responsibilities. I understand, but you can still do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need a perfect environment. You don't even need complete quietness. You just need to make a decision to start and to repeat on a consistent basis. Just bring yourself to the shepherd at the place of quietness, because he's been waiting for you for long. He has been speaking to you all this while. You just need quietness to be able to hear him and be led by him. Who knows? The most important step of your life may depend on this. In conclusion, the clarity and the direction you've been looking for is in the place of stillness, in the place of quietness, in the place of calmness. And you cannot find it in more content, in more teaching, but in the place of rest and quietness. Thank you for watching this episode. If it helped you, share it with somebody who also needs it. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Light for your path, truth for the journey. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.